Probably nobody has been a bigger anti-Kyle than Anna Kasparian. She's been pounding this anti-Kyle rant of hers for quite a while. Well, she got caught in a big problem. She made a very bad statement, something that was demonstrably untrue. And she got called on it, and now she's here to explain herself. And a lot of people have said, well, now she's turned around. She's no longer the anti-Kyle she once was. Don't believe it. It's the same Anna Kasparian that we've come to know and love. Well, we've come to know. Hello out there. I am trying to get through.
With his powerful brainwaves cradled in the warmth of reasoning, it's time for Johnnie Walker Dread to straighten you out on a thing or two. Emanating all the way from exciting Las Vegas, Oklahoma, it's the Johnnie Walker Dread Show.
The Kyle Rittenhouse trial is underway, and in his opening statements, the defense attorney for Rittenhouse, Mark Richards, argued that his client was not in any way some dangerous murderer, but he was there in Kenosha, Wisconsin, a state that he does not live in, to essentially protect the community, and then he found himself acting in self-defense.
A state he does not live in. I'd like to ask the anti-Kyles, where in the hell is that an issue? Show me where in the law that makes a difference. I hear this all the time. He crossed state lines. He didn't live in Wisconsin. I would like to see where is it so written that that makes a difference. Can someone oblige?
So let's hear what he had to say, and I'll fill you in with some more details.
Mr. Binger makes a big thing out of Kyle Rittenhouse was the only person who shot somebody that evening. True. Mr. Rittenhouse was the only person who was chased by Joseph Rosenbaum that evening. The evidence will show he thought probably that he could get that gun from Kyle Rittenhouse. He was wrong. Kyle Rittenhouse protected himself, protected his firearm so it couldn't be taken, used against him or other people from Mr. Rosenbaum who'd made threats to kill. And the other individuals who didn't see that shooting attacked him in the street like an animal.
So to give you some more of what's happening in the case so far in the trial, the New York Times reports that when he went downtown on the third day of protests after the police shooting of Jacob Blake, Rittenhouse was there to clean graffiti and help protect the city from more destruction, his lawyer said. So, there are, of course, legitimate questions as to why Rittenhouse was there, especially since he's a resident of Illinois and really had no business in Kenosha, Wisconsin. So
Let's see, he has no business in Kenosha, Wisconsin. Now, his father lives there. His best friend lives there. He has a job there. He doesn't mention that. She tries to make it look like he came from 200 miles away, but we've all heard this a million times. Is this not the standard mantra of the anti-Kyles?
What his lawyer is trying to do here is make the case that he acted in self-defense in using his weapon. And he's also trying to explain why Rittenhouse would be there in the first place. Richards, the defense attorney here, turned to the people who were shot by Rittenhouse, characterizing them as hostile and belligerent.
Yeah, they were.
So what we had shared with you earlier in regard to the judge in this case, allowing the defense attorney or the defense to use that kind of rhetoric to kind of paint a picture of the very people who were shot and killed, that is playing out. However, as we had also shared with you earlier, the prosecutors are not allowed to use the word victim when referring to the individuals who were shot, including the two who were shot and killed by Rittenhouse. Remember?
And that's right. And I have another video that explains exactly why. I posted it about 2 or 3 days ago. Essentially, the fact that Kyle is an accused and everybody else is not makes the rules different for him than everybody else. If you don't believe me, keep in mind that Kyle Rittenhouse is entitled to free legal counsel, but witnesses are not. How is that fair? If Kyle is entitled to free legal counsel, Why aren't the witnesses? Well, because it's not their hide on the line here. They're not facing prison time. He is. They're not on trial. He is. We have different rules for the accused than we have for witnesses. In truth, the term victims has a very strong negative connotation. It implies that Kyle has committed crimes because we associate the word victim with victim of crime. We use the term looters and arsonists to describe the people he shot only if we can show that they've actually committed these crimes, but because they are not entitled to the same protections as Kyle is. If the jury comes away with the unfair, let's say, impression that Gage Grosskreutz was guilty of, say, arson, it's no big deal because Gage is not being tried for arson. He's not going to face the penalties for that. People always say, well, we need a fair trial. That doesn't mean you treat the accused and the witnesses the same.
Remember, there were 3 who were shot, 2 of whom died as a result of him opening fire. Now, here's what allegedly happened that night, according to the defense attorney. After Rittenhouse shot Joseph Rosenbaum and fled down Sheridan Road away from the scene, he was chased by dozens of people, including, here are the 2 other victims, right? Anthony Huber and Greg Grosskreutz.
Greg Grosskreutz. That's how familiar she is with this case.
Okay. As citizens who were trying to stop an active shooter, the defense characterized them as aggressors. Now, Huber, according to the defense here, Huber bludgeoned Rittenhouse with a skateboard,
which he did,
Richard said, and a man who was captured on video but never identified jump kicked Mr. Rittenhouse in the face.
Which he did. We have it on video, Anna. Sorry, you may laugh. Here's what the defense is saying. But what he said here is on video.
So look, these details do matter because this stuff is caught on camera. You do see it in the video, someone taking a skateboard and hitting Rittenhouse over the head with it as he's on his back. And
these details do matter because it was caught on camera. So I guess if it wasn't caught on camera, they wouldn't. In other words, these details matter because people captured on video that can disprove our claims that these things didn't happen. Guess what? If we didn't have the videotapes of what was happening to Kyle, he'd be convicted by people like Anna Kasparian.
And I haven't seen this video yet, but it was already, the New York Times says it's on tape. There's someone captured on video, someone who has not been identified, kicking Rittenhouse in the face.
You haven't seen that video yet? Really? You haven't seen that yet? It's been a year now.
So look, these details matter because if you're going to make an argument that you acted in self-defense, there needs to be some proof that there was an imminent threat, right? And in this case, the imminent threat is the guy using the skateboard and someone kicking Rittenhouse in the face as he's on his back.
No, you don't need proof. Damn it, Anna. You need to understand the law before you start yapping about it. That's not what the law says. The burden of proof is on the prosecution. They have to prove it didn't happen. Come on. I mean, learn a little. It's called the law. Wisconsin has its own laws, and in Wisconsin, the denial of self-defense is a burden on the prosecution. But what am I saying? It's the law in every state.
Now, what really mattered to me was how all of this unfolded. What was the thing that sparked it? What started all of it?
Well, to answer that question, we do research. We follow the story for a long time so that a year later, we don't have to ask ourselves the question.
And initially, I was under the assumption that Rittenhouse was the person who was chasing after Joseph Rosenbaum, that's how it had started.
Yeah, initially, maybe for like the first day. It's been over a year. And you just made this mistake just a few days ago. So you've been operating under this wrong assumption for well over a year. Even though there's been a crapload of videos and testimonials that have come out to disprove it, you didn't listen to any of it.
But I was wrong about that. Okay, so I want to correct the record. I was, in fact, wrong about that. And to show you the evidence, to reinforce that I was wrong about that, I want to go to this video that shows how everything really started.
You don't have to do this. You don't have to play the video. We knew you were wrong from the very get-go. You don't have to prove anything to us. Everybody, including almost every anti-Kyle, knew that Joseph Rosenbaum was chasing Kyle Rittenhouse. Do you really need to convince us? But we'll watch the video anyway.
Here is where we first see Joseph Rosenbaum, the first person Kyle Rittenhouse fatally shoots that night. He joins the fight against the armed civilians.
If I want to show that it was Joseph Rosenbaum chasing Kyle Rittenhouse, I don't think I have to show all this. Maybe cut to the chase, but we'll see. Literally cut to the chase. Do you get that?
As other protesters tried to stop him. Rosenbaum has just been released from the hospital after undergoing mental health treatment.
Now, Anna thinks that's probably Kyle Rittenhouse there in the red shirt.
His reasons for being here are unclear, and he doesn't appear to have attended a protest before. But his actions on this night will add to an already volatile situation. Rittenhouse walks towards a parking lot where cars are being vandalized. He passes Joseph Rosenbaum, who is fighting with the armed men at the gas station earlier. Rosenbaum now starts chasing Rittenhouse and throws a plastic bag that holds his belongings from the hospital. Close behind them, a man holds up a handgun and fires it.
Keep in mind, this is the footage that Anna Kasparian had never seen before. If she had seen it, she would know that it was Kyle Rittenhouse being chased. But evidently, she never saw this. How many out there have never seen this before?
Don't know why. Then Rosenbaum lunges towards Rittenhouse. Rittenhouse fires 4 times.
So those details matter, right? Who was chasing who matters. The gunshots by some other unidentified person, that matters, especially if you're Rittenhouse and you're running away and then you hear shots and then Rosenbaum lunges toward him.
Now she's painting a different picture. She's going to come around, right, and say, you know, maybe Kyle was defending himself that night. Nah.
So the question is, in a court of law, is it considered reasonable for Rittenhouse to act in self-defense? You know, was there a legitimate threat there where Rittenhouse would reasonably want to defend himself by opening fire?
Good question.
That is what's going to be debated and deliberated upon, okay? Other details I wanted to share with you about this case. So he's facing 6 charges. Here's what the charges are.
You don't have to read the charges to us. We know the charges. Everybody knows the charges. You want to read the charges because it makes it sound like he's guilty. Here are these serious charges he's facing. And as you read them, people go, oh my gosh, what a killer. That's why you're wanting to do it.
First-degree reckless homicide, first-degree recklessly endangering safety.
Recklessly endangering safety? Oh my God, see how serious that is? How guilty can you be? You've been charged with these crimes. You must have done something wrong.
I mean, remember, you have members of militia groups there with open carry, which is legal.
You have militia groups there with open carry, but that's legal. And that somehow implicates him in a crime. Okay.
In Wisconsin, you have him running around with this gun, like literally running around with this weapon.
Yeah, running around. And no, he wasn't running around. He was running toward the police in a particular direction because he was being chased.
So that's one of the charges he's facing. You have a first-degree intentional homicide, attempted first-degree intentional homicide for.
Notice how she's reading this thing off. She's basically making a point that all these charges, and they're so serious, he must have done something wrong here. No innocent person is ever accused of so many serious crimes.
The shooting of Gage Grosskreutz, who was wounded but is still alive. You also have possession of a dangerous weapon by a person under the age of 18. I want to make a correction on our previous reporting on that issue as well. He did, in fact, hold possession of a firearm that he was not legally allowed to carry.
Yeah, you don't know that. You don't know that. That's still being decided. She can't even get a mea culpa correct. Here's a chance to correct the record. And she says, I'm here to correct the record. But then what she does is she just puts out more bullshit.
Okay. It is illegal for him to have it because he's 17.
Yeah, well, I don't know. We'll see.
However, previously it was reported that he had obtained the gun in Illinois and then crossed state lines into Wisconsin with that illegal gun.
Yeah, and who was it that was telling us that story forever? You. You're the one that was banding that one around. You should be sued for that. I'm sorry. You're supposed to be at least somewhat of a fact journalist. You should check your stories out first before broadcasting them. That was just plain dumb. We have known for over a year now that that was simply incorrect.
Now it turns out, based on an investigation, that there was an individual who sold the gun to Kyle Rittenhouse in Wisconsin.
Notice how she makes it sound as if we have found out just recently, a couple of days ago, that there was one person who sold Kyle that rifle. He pulled up into a parking lot and he opened up his trunk and he pulled a rifle out. And he goes, okay, here you go. And Kyle surreptitiously hands him a bunch of money. That's what she's trying to cast. The reality of it is there was no investigation per se. Yeah, the Illinois State Police investigated. They found out that, guess what? The rifle was bought in Wisconsin. You really need an investigation for that? And it was well known for over a year. And this individual who sold him the rifle, it was a clerk at a local hardware store. See, this is how you lie. This is how you make things as they are not.
So he did not cross state lines with an illegal gun, but he had an illegal gun.
Well, we don't know that yet. Judge Schroeder will rule on that later.
Okay, so do with that information what you will. It's important to know the facts. Those are the details.
It's important to know the facts. Well, you don't seem to be all that worked up over them. If it was so important to know the facts, then why didn't you know this stuff a year ago? It must not have been too important to you.
Now let's talk about what these charges mean. First-degree intentional homicide is analogous to first-degree murder in other states. It's defined as causing the death of another human being with intent to kill that person or someone else without the presence of certain mitigating circumstances specified in the law.
There's no reason to read these. She's been covering this trial for a long time. She's not gotten anything right yet. But all of a sudden, it's during the mea culpa where she's going to come up and explain how she was wrong. That's when she decides to read these. This is no accident. She wants to read these because she wants to convey the idea that Kyle Rittenhouse, despite all of my mistakes, he's still a bad person. Look what he's accused of doing. This is not accidental. This is done on purpose.
Rittenhouse faces this charge in connection with the fatal shooting of Anthony Huber. It is a Class A felony that carries a basic sentence of life in prison. Now, after Rittenhouse opened fire and killed Rosenbaum, he then ran away from the scene, and there were protesters there who were like screaming. You can see it in video. They're screaming at him and they're like, why did you shoot him? Why did you shoot him?
Also, cranium that boy. She doesn't mention that part.
And there were other protesters who reasonably believed that Kyle Rittenhouse was a threat because he had opened fire. They might.
Well, see here. How did they reasonably believe? Did you ever interview them? Did you interview Anthony Huber to understand why he did it? No, he's dead. Did you ever interview Gage Grosskreutz? No, you haven't. You don't know their motives.
might not have known the circumstances of how that all went down, but they saw him as a threat, and that was when they were trying to take the weapon away from him.
Notice how much deference she gives to those people like Gage and Anthony, but she doesn't do the same thing for Kyle. She doesn't say, and Kyle reasonably believed, blah, blah, blah. Kyle must have felt that, blah, blah, blah. She doesn't do that for him, but she does it for Anthony and Gage. Gee, I wonder why.
And that was when he opened fire, and in the process of doing so, shot two other individuals, with one of them getting injured, surviving, okay? And then the other, Huber, dying as a result of the wounds.
Notice she completely whitewashes what actually happened. The fact that Kyle fell down, she doesn't even mention it. The fact that Anthony Huber actually hit him with his skateboard, really tried to kill him, doesn't mention it. The fact that Gage Grosskreutz pulled a gun on him, doesn't mention it. Keep in mind, their motives could still be pure, I suppose, but she's not even going to go that far. She's going to totally whitewash all of their actions that night to paint Kyle in the most negative light possible. This is not a mea culpa. She believes that Kyle is guilty. She's maintaining it. And she's never going to change her opinion in a million years.
So those are the details as we know them now.
No, those are the details as we knew them a year ago, not just now. Don't give us this crap that these are revelations that have come about recently that we've all been surprised with. Oh my God, amazing. It looks like Kyle Rittenhouse tripped and fell. Who would have thought? Come on. You just haven't been paying attention. Or, more likely, you knew all along and you went ahead and lied and then got caught at it.
And again, I want to reiterate, though Wisconsin is an open carry state where it is legal for adults to carry firearms openly, state law prohibits minors from doing so. Rittenhouse was 17 at the time of the shooting. This crime is a Class A misdemeanor that...
A Class A what? A Class A misdemeanor? I want to emphasize. And she even puts out a little text box to emphasize a misdemeanor.
Carries a basic sentence of up to 9 months in prison, a fine of up to $10,000 or both.
Yeah, if you're a habitual criminal, if you've already got a couple of armed robberies under your belt, you might get that. He's 18 years old. He's never been convicted of anything. He's not going to get 9 months in prison and a $10,000 fine. Give me a break. In fact, his case is exactly why we created probation in the first place. Now, I'm assuming, of course, that he's acquitted of the other charges.
I think that charge is pretty open and shut.
It's open and shut. The fact that the judge can't even render a decision yet, he has to actually think about it some more. The fact that you have both attorneys on both sides arguing over it. The fact that you have debates raging all across social media about what those statutes actually mean. That means that this is open and shut? Hey, look, I don't know how Judge Schroeder is going to rule. He very well rule against Kyle, but it is not open and shut.
I mean, he's 17, he has the weapon. I think there's a lot of evidence indicating he has the weapon. So I don't see how he would be let off on that charge.
That's because you haven't been paying attention. You haven't been watching the news. You haven't been watching any of the court proceedings. If you had, Anna, you would know that there is a motion out there to have this charge dropped, and the judge is struggling with it.
But the other charges, based on what we're seeing in video and based on the case the defense attorney is making, shaky, okay? Now, you can question why Rittenhouse was there. There were members of the Boogaloo Boys there.
There were members of the Boogaloo Boys there, which implicates Kyle how?
Obviously, it looks like they were there to cause trouble.
Maybe they were, but what does that have to do with Kyle? He's not a member of the Boogaloo Boys.
They argue they're there to, protect the community. But one thing that's abundantly clear to me, based on, the reports I've seen, the videos I've seen, the cops did absolutely favor the armed militia groups.
Because the armed militia groups are not attacking them. The armed militia groups are not throwing rocks at them. Yes, it is true that the British heavily favored the French against the Germans in World War II because the French weren't attacking the British. The Germans were. So, yeah, it's understandable that the cops would favor the militia groups. The militia groups, whatever you want to call them, are there to protect property. They're trying to prevent crimes from being committed. The other ones, as the cops view them, are people who want to commit crimes. Gee, I wonder why the cops would favor one group over the other. Keep in mind, this is post-curfew. The legitimate protesters have gone home. What we're left with here are a bunch of people trying to tear shit up, and they were doing it.
Or militia members. They offered them water. At one point, they pushed the protesters and the members of the militia in the same area, very well knowing that that could lead to a physical altercation or an eruption of violence. And Rittenhouse, despite the fact he opened fire that night and killed 2 people, was not taken into custody that night. He was taken into custody the next day.
Well, we now know why. We talked to the police officer who did it. Well, I mean, he was on trial. He was on the stand. He basically said, look, we had no way of knowing he had done anything. And that's perfectly plausible. The police aren't going to say, he shot somebody, but let's not take him into custody. Give me a break. The police arrest white people all the time for crimes. They're not going to let this kid go if they legitimately thought that he had killed somebody. You're asking us to believe a dark, dark motive that lies beyond comprehension.
He was allowed to leave that night. And I just question if the same treatment would be given to a protester who did the same. And I wouldn't want that. Anyone who opens fire should probably be taken into custody, should be investigated immediately. That didn't happen. And I question why the cops decided to push both groups of people into the same area, very well knowing that these are opposing groups and you have open carry and a pretty dangerous situation brewing. But we'll give you guys more details about this case as we learn them. Again, I think it's important to know the facts. And for my previous inaccuracies, I apologize to you guys. Obviously, it was not intentional. And I want you guys to know what the details are.
Yeah, it was intentional. You just got so much flack over it. You finally had to say something. It is impossible for anybody at this juncture to believe that Joseph Rosenbaum was being chased by Rittenhouse. Just not possible. You knew better. By the way, there's something else I really hate about this. This whole thing about Kyle being allowed by the police to go home without being arrested. Okay, fine. You want to make something out of it? Great. But when you're talking about the guilt of Kyle Rittenhouse, why are you bringing this up? It has no bearing on whether Kyle is guilty or not. You can't try Kyle for that. It's not his fault. Even if the police officers were in the wrong and should have arrested him and didn't, that's not Kyle Rittenhouse's fault. So why can't you focus? Why can't you bring up a video where you describe the evidence at hand and determine whether Kyle Rittenhouse acted in legitimate self-defense or not without bringing that other crap up? There's no point in bringing up the fact that there were other militia types there. Kyle wasn't a member of them. It doesn't matter whether the Boogaloo Boys were there or had evil intent. Kyle was not a Boogaloo Boy. Why can't you focus? Take a look at the evidence that has been amounted against and for Kyle Rittenhouse and use that to determine his guilt or innocence. And I'll tell you the reason why you don't. You know, deep down, this kid's getting off. And you're starting to admit it. You're starting to prepare for the eventuality of him being exonerated. And what you're doing is you're stoking up the fires of unrest. And you're pinning it on what? The police let Kyle go. He murdered somebody. The justice system let him go. The police didn't even arrest him. That's what this is about. You're preparing for the post-exoneration riots. Like my video, subscribe to my channel.